Hi, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. So, New York Governor Kathy Hochul has enacted the first statewide moratorium on so-called hyperscale data centers in the state. Those are the biggest ones, right? The ones that use 50 or more megawatts of power to operate. 50 megawatts, by the way, is enough to power tens of thousands of homes. The moratorium is just a year. And in that time, Hochul says that New York is going to come up with a regulatory framework. I spoke with her about this and a couple of other things as well here in the studio on Wednesday. I want to bring in New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Hi, Governor.
How are you?
I'm good. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
You were just at the World Cup?
Oh, yes. I was there for the opening and a couple of matches and then the finals. It was unbelievably positive and an energy that the city deserved and needed for a while. It's just sort of a breath of fresh air.
I know that New York is actually going for the Olympics in 2042, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Any lessons learned from what we just dealt with the World Cup as you look towards 2042 and the potential of that?
I don't know if it's a lesson, but it's just a reminder that New York is an Olympic state. We are a state that embraces all sports, but to have it all come together with the Olympics in New York is my next major goal.
Yeah.
A little more long-term,
Yeah.
but when you saw what happened with the last Olympics, so well covered, it's a synergy between two different regions, two different cities.
Yeah.
We can do that here in New York, where you take the North Country, which hosted the Olympics in the 30s and 1980, the Miracle on Ice, and have the sledding sports and the slope sports there. But why not have the ice skating sports and others right here in New York City?
Yeah.
So can you imagine how many more people will draw to this area? And in a dream world, we'd have high-speed rail take us up, but you never know. You never know.
We don't have much time to 2042 to build that.
I think there's enough time. I mean, it's a serious proposition.
Yeah.
We just need support from the federal government. And so if that happens, that could change this trajectory of the economy upstate forever. And so I think what happened with World Cup to show how we were able to open up to the whole world in a safe, secure way. I mean, you think about at least 1,000 exercises that my law enforcement did with New Jersey and FBI and NYPD to make sure that it was a secure location and everyone felt good. Those are some lessons. You have to be ready for that. Be ready for that, but we know how to do it.
Yeah.
New York knows how to protect its people and its athletes. We've demonstrated that. So I'm excited about this opportunity. And everywhere I go, people want to talk about New York hosting the Olympics.
Yeah, of course, it would be incredible to see and to be able to watch as a New Yorker. I want to stick with this idea of economics because one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you today was about these AI data centers and the announcement that you had just made. You just enacted the first governor in the country to enact this one-year moratorium on hyperscale AI data centers. Why did you decide to do this and why now?
Because literally these companies are flooding the zone. There are so many applications in primarily small communities across the state of New York that aren't quite sure how to manage this. They need our help. They've asked me for help. And at first I thought this was more of a local decision, but then I realized they don't have the negotiating ability, the clout, the wherewithal to be able to negotiate the best benefits or to make sure that these companies, as I said in my State of the State, are either bringing their own power or paying a premium into the grid to cover the cost, beyond covering the cost. And so I said, we can do this. We can do this in New York. We embrace innovation. We want to make sure that people know that AI is something that we are very supportive of. But in terms of what we have to do, I want to make sure New Yorkers aren't paying a penny more. No ratepayer should have to pay more because our finite amount of energy is being consumed by these huge, massive operations that don't create a lot of jobs.
And I know that you're saying this is just a pause, right? This is a one-year moratorium, but a year in AI world is a long time. And we didn't even start hearing about AI really until 2021, 2022. And now we are here and it's $1 trillion business. So how do you balance that in making this decision and the money that as a state New York could lose out on?
It's not an either or proposition because AI companies are coming here. We just saw the report yesterday that 40,000 new jobs have been created on Wall Street, primarily driven by the AI boom. Those companies will come here because they're looking for the talent, the innovation, the energy. And
so you think they're going to come here no matter what?
They're already here.
Right.
And we don't have that many data centers yet. So we don't need the data centers to support that. But to those who think that by rejecting data centers for the year while we're doing this thoughtful process means we're rejecting innovation, that's just a false narrative. And some have tried it. Wall Street Journal made that proposition, and I wrote back in a letter to the editor, no, that is wrong. That is the wrong analysis. I was just on Long Island earlier today. I was in Niagara Falls, Buffalo yesterday. I was in Albany a couple of days before, holding forums with stakeholders, businesses, people in academia, people who represent the environmental community, head of the Farm Association, talking to everybody about what does this mean and what can we do to be supportive of your communities. So we're not saying we just want to be the first to have a moratorium. I want to be the first to get it right. Getting it right means I'm going to work on a framework for all these communities that want to host these data centers and make sure they're negotiating all the benefits they should be getting. Because I've studied this all over the country. They can get a lot more. We can get more money put on the grid. I want them to pay into a larger grid resiliency fund so I can help make the investments that have been long overdue. I don't want to have tax breaks for them. Hardworking New Yorkers should not be having to allow for tax breaks for these big companies to come. So if you're going to use our talent and our natural resources and be disruptive with the noise and the consumption of water, you have to give back more. And I want you to know this. I will give you the rules of the road. Businesses want certainty. I know that. Businesses say, tell us the rules and we'll follow them. New Yorkers want protection. I can do both. That's why we want this pause for a year.
So I think it's interesting because you have, transparently, you've talked a lot about how you want New York to be part of the AI boon. But how do you do that without the data centers, right? Are we then relying, is New York State then going to be reliant on, other states, right? Are other states going to pick up for the slack that we cannot provide right now because New York will have this 1-year moratorium? Because again, 1-year moratorium, and then maybe next year you say, okay, this thing is lifted, let's let some data centers in, but how long is that going to actually take to get to a place in which it's operational?
When we lift the moratorium, individual communities can do what they want to do. If they want to have their own moratorium, I was out on Long Island, one of the biggest communities on Long Island just launched an 18-month moratorium. They don't want any part of it. Other communities, maybe rural parts of upstate New York, do want this. I'm not the arbiter of that decision.
Got it.
But I'm going to make sure that when you come here to New York, you're not driving up the rates, that you're paying more for the power or you're bringing your own power source, that you're not disrupting our water supply and you're not contaminating it. I need to know these answers because I don't want to just rush to this now like other states have done and find out the collateral damage later when it's too late to fix it. So we'll be more open to this when people have the sense of security that their governor and her administration have really pressure tested all the aspects of this and got it right. You don't have to have the data centers here to be successful, but that doesn't mean we won't welcome them at the right time and place under really different conditions than exist right now. So we're just being thoughtful about this.
Right.
And people are happy we're doing this. I mean, the majority of people in this country want thoughtful leaders who say, wait a minute, we're not just going to get swept up in this Wild West gold rush. We're going to step back and make sure we're not hurting communities in the process.
Can you do it in a year?
Yes. I already started. When I announced in my State of the State address in January that data centers who come to New York have to provide their own power or they have to pay a premium, my Public Service Commission started immediately, beginning probably a little over a year process. So I'm already ahead of the game. I've already started this to determine what that rate structure looks like. You can't just say I'm doing it one day and have it be in effect the next. It takes time to figure that out. The next part is I'm starting a generic environmental impact statement to study the impacts on water. My Empire State Development team is putting together this community investment framework so communities know what they can get out of this. I need to go to the legislature to change the tax breaks and have that eliminated. All that can easily happen within a year.
You mentioned the Wall Street Journal. And you mentioned that a lot of people are behind this, right? There's a Gallup poll out. I believe 71% of Americans opposing data centers being built near them, Democrats especially, your base. The Wall Street Journal editorial board essentially said, this move by you, this moratorium, this 1-year moratorium on AI data centers, it is pandering to your electorate, right? This is what they said. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. and that you were blocking economic development. This is what the Wall Street Journal editorial said. What is your response to that? Because I know you wrote back, and you did say that is not what we are doing, but you didn't address the election part of their argument.
Well, I'll tell you where I was today. I was on Long Island, having a representative from Brookhaven, one of the largest communities on Long Island, a Republican town, Republican supervisor, Republican board.
Yeah.
They just enacted an 18-month moratorium. So anyone who thinks distilling it down as if it's political pandering, first of all, doesn't know me. I don't have to do that, and I don't do that. And secondly,
you're saying it's both Republicans and Democrats.
It's absolutely Democrats and Republicans. 71% of Americans are not all Democrats.
Right.
So people are just creating this narrative, trying to cast aspersions on my motivation, clearly not caring who I am and my record of always finding the right answer and balancing competing interests. I deal with all kinds of competing interests on an hourly basis in this job. And I know how to get it right. We can be pro-business, but also very much pro-New Yorkers, pro-communities. And those who will not engage in those tough questions and the exercise of getting right are just not demonstrating the leadership that Americans and New Yorkers are asking for right now. That's what I'm responding to. I don't look at the polls, but I know when I'm out there speaking to people on Long Island, stopping in diners, talking to people, Republican areas, they appreciate what I'm doing.
Have you gotten any pushback from the Anthropics of the world in this moratorium?
People want certainty. They want to know the rules of the road. I will give them that. So yes, there were conversations on the front end, so people knew what we were doing.
You mean you had conversations with these tech companies?
My
team did.
My team let them know.
Yeah, gave them a heads up this was coming.
Well, not so much a heads up, but just saying, we're going to be doing something in this space. And we ultimately will get to a place where we'll define the rules of the road and we'll want you to follow them. That's it.
Got it. I want to talk a little about New York City Mayor Mamdani. How do you think he's doing in his first 200 days?
It's important that we continue to work together to address what I think was a large part of his electoral success, and that is letting people know you understand to our core, what your pain points are, what is stressing you out, that we understand that the cost of everything is so damn high in this country and in our city, and what we can do about it. So I've worked closely with him on one of the biggest costs for a family is childcare. And giving the city $1.2 billion to help launch the 2-year-old program he wanted to do. We're on a path to universal childcare, so there's alignment there. He talked a lot about buses in his campaign. We launched a couple weeks ago our initiative to have much faster buses, again, taking away the frustration people have. I've had to support the city and the mayor and the city council with money to help them get out from under a financial situation they found themselves in, not their fault at the beginning, and helping them get the money so they don't get a bond rating downgrade. I cannot have that happen. New York City is the epicenter, financial epicenter of not just this state, but the nation. I have to make sure that the leadership that the voters selected are successful. That is the foundation of my relationship with the mayor, and there have been successes, and I want to make sure that people know I'm not letting New York fail. I want to work with the mayor, work with him to make sure that the policies that he talked about, but also the ones that stabilize the city, invite more businesses, create more jobs, because a good job takes care of a lot of social problems.
So in speaking of economics, he just announced on Wednesday he's appointing former FTC Chair Lena Khan to lead New York City's Economic Development Corporation.
Well, he paired her up with Tony Shores.
Right.
Tony Shores is a longtime veteran of city government and someone that I've worked with and has a perspective about how important attracting and retaining businesses are.
But she is an antitrust crusader, right? She is a progressive superstar. Some see her as hostile to the business. You talk about this pairing. You said that for a reason because you knew basically where I was going with this. So do you support her appointment considering how she has been seen politically, especially when it comes to businesses and what that could do for New York City's economy?
I'm not second guessing these appointments. I do hundreds, if not thousands of appointments at the state level. And I want to make sure that the city does well, but I don't tell the mayor who to pick as his appointees. I don't have a relationship with the former head of the Federal Trade Commission. What I do have is a relationship with Tony Shores, and I have confidence in his ability to work in a collaborative way with all the perspectives that are expected in his new position here. And the business community will have more confidence knowing that he's there for sure. And the mayor wants to do it this way. I wish him success. I want the city to be successful.
Let's talk about something else the mayor has announced, because he has promised to carry out the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Then he released a video on Tuesday night in which he said that he had determined that the city did not have the legal authority and instead called on federal authorities to arrest Netanyahu.
My administration has reviewed every avenue available under applicable law to determine whether New York City could execute the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant if Benjamin Netanyahu came here. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant.
Where are you on this?
My position is that is the correct answer, that the city does not have the authority, and he chose to go through the questioning about this, and he came to that conclusion. Listen, I understand this frustration with the leadership in Israel, not the people of Israel, not the place of Israel, but the leadership and what is being conducted. And so he is responding to that. And listen, I'm the governor of New York. I deal with thousands of issues every day. I'm not stepping into international relations right now because I want to make sure that the Jewish community feels protected in the city, that I've done a lot to fight anti-Semitism because they're under siege. We've had a huge spike in hate crimes. And my job is to make sure we have the resource to protect sensitive locations, the synagogues, yeshivas, mosques. So I'm working on areas where I actually have some direct control, and I do not control the leadership of Israel. And it's up to the people to make the right decision.
I want to talk about election security quickly, because we heard this primetime speech from the president last week, in which he has repeatedly claimed, falsely, as we well know, that the 2020 election was stolen. That is false. We know that to be false, and the president repeatedly makes these types of false claims. But New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill yesterday, or I should say Tuesday, said that more than 6,000 non-citizens were accidentally added to the state's voter rolls because of a software error. And she also said that like 400 or so ended up actually voting in various elections since 2022. You actually said on Face the Nation this week that you're not getting enough for election security in this state. We are looking at staring down the barrel of a midterm election, which is incredibly important for your reelection and for this nation. Do you feel like you have what you need to secure elections here in New York State? Are you making sure people are double checking, triple checking to find out if something like what Mikey Sherrill has just announced isn't happening here in New York State?
No, what I said was we're not getting the resources from the federal government. Therefore, I'm backfilling and giving the resources to make sure that every single New Yorker has the confidence to know that their vote will be protected at a time when Donald Trump is intentionally trying to undermine the security that everyone in our country used to have before you had someone who's been denying, and all the people around have been denying what everybody knows is a fact, that Joe Biden was legally elected in 2020. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, people are noticing the economy is not doing well, that the war in Iran is not going well. So what does the president do? Does he talk about how people are suffering under the economy or the high cost of gasoline because of his self-inflicted war? No, he does what he does so masterfully. He goes out there and throws out a red herring, to get everybody to take a look over here and forget what's really happening in their lives. Mm-hmm. Nobody's falling for it. And during his address, he was talking about what China was doing. He was on all kinds of tangents. I don't even know where he was going with that. So it's got nothing to do with New Jersey. I commend the governor for speaking honestly about what happened with an independent contractor that was involved in this process. That cannot happen in New York because we do not have outside third-party vendors involved in this process. Mm-hmm. And in fact, everybody who registers to vote at a DMV, for example, that information is given to the Board of Elections, a bipartisan commission that determines whether or not they'll accept that registrant as eligible to vote. That's why it won't happen here in New York. But that's separate from the whole idea that we have to actually protect people's right to be able to walk into a polling place safely, securely, without interference from the federal government or whatever Donald Trump and his cronies have up their sleeve because they are terrified of this midterm election.
You're going for your re-election bid in November. You confident in your bid?
I'll tell you this. I'm a big-time sports fan, Buffalo Bills particularly. I always run like an underdog. Yes, if the election's today, I win. I win big. Mm-hmm. But I always run through the tape, mixing my metaphors of sports. I run into the end zone, and I don't talk about elections confidence until the day after the election. I've been in 16 elections. I always run hard, and that's part of my success. So I know for sure people are responding to my successes. They like the fact that we put affordability front and center. It was not just something that came out of elections 2 years ago. I ran on this in 2022, knowing that the pandemic had driven up costs, supply chain. Then we have tariffs. Then we have inflation. So I'm laser focused on letting people know what I've been doing, what I'll continue to do for them as governor, and how proud I am to be the governor of the state of New York.
Did you ever run for president one day?
Nope.
Oh, wow. There's some news, everybody. No. She's not doing it.
No, I tell you, we were chatting beforehand. I love what I do every day. That's why you don't see me leaving often or going out of the country. Yeah. I love the challenge that is required of me to work with such diverse parts of our state, going from Buffalo to New York City to Albany to Long Island within the course of a day and a half.
Yeah.
I deal with everybody who's elected. It's my job. That's why I'm talking to Republicans on Long Island today. And I have to deal with Donald Trump on some issues. And I work with the mayor of Buffalo. I work with the mayor of Albany, New York City. It is the highest honor I could have imagined. There's nothing I want to continue to do more than this. And I'll be happy to remain as governor of the state of New York.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul, thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.